Welcome to a new video I'm making that I'm going to probably end up titling Movie Talk, where I'm going to talk about different movies that I watched throughout the year, because one of the things I'm trying to do a bit more this year is watch movies. I think in total I probably ended up watching like 3 movies last year, and I think the year before, literally the only movie I saw in a theater was Star Wars. So I'm not an avid movie watcher. I usually pick up a few films. I actually have a few behind me and one to my right that I'm gonna talk about a bit later in another video. But I went around. I work at a Best Buy currently, and I asked my coworkers, "Hey, what are some good movies that I should watch?" And then I thought of the first one that this is about, Tenet. I saw and was like, you know what? I actually want to sit down. I want to give this a watch. I enjoyed Inception, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Tenet. It's written and directed by Christopher Nolan, and it features. I have the actors over here written. It has John David Washington, Robert Patterson, and Elizabeth Debicki. And I mean, like Robert Patterson. Like last year, I watched The Lighthouse. That guy from Twilight has come around to be a great actor. I hope his Batman is interesting. I know he's making the Batman movie, but this is just a action movie made by Christopher Nolan. I think what it seemed like he was doing was trying to one up Inception. Maybe he was trying to recapture that good stuff that he got there, and that this one being more focused on time, while Inception's more focused on dreams, of course. I will say there will be minor spoilers in these videos. I don't think I'll do anything to spoil major plots that happen later in the movie, but I will describe the basics of the movie and what I thought. So overall, it's about John David Washington, who plays just the protagonist. He never gains a name, or is given a name other than the protagonist. As a CIA operative who goes on this mission in the beginning, essentially proves that he's a good operative, so they put him on a more top secret mission because they know he can keep quiet, where he has to track down this person who has these bullets essentially that can reverse time and all the crazy hijinks he gets in there. Once he gets introduced to Robert Patterson's character, it pretty much becomes this awesome action flick where a lot of the action is played in reverse. I would love to go and, since I only rented this, I would love to go and see how they filmed a lot of the action scenes, because they're backwards, or well, some of them are backwards, some of them are forwards, so that's why I would love to see how they filmed those and how they were able to make those happen on the screen. I think overall for this movie, I definitely enjoyed the fact that of how it was filmed. It looked really cool. It was a really good looking action film. I like to look at all the different set pieces they used. But overall, that's what it starts out as, is a relatively just good action movie with, Christopher Nolanisms is what people call them, I guess. But it starts out just as a cool action movie, and it gets deeper and deeper as the movie goes on, and they get introduced to Elizabeth Debicki's character, who I won't go too much about who she is in the story, but they get to her, and they're trying to essentially go after who is her husband type character, who is the main villain, and hijinks ensue, and that's where this series really gets into that point where I got the term for what I would qualify this movie as a enjoyable headache, is the Inception parts, where they're trying to go in and discuss the time features and how they affect what's happening in the movie. It's a little hard without spoiling a lot that's going to happen later in the movie, but the time elements can get a little confusing, because a lot of stuff that happens in the beginning you have to rethink once you learn the time elements, and it can become a bit of a head scratcher if you're not able to think, well, how does this moment connect to this moment, connect to this moment. But overall, it's a relatively entertaining movie. I think people who aren't even into like thinking too hard during movies could get some enjoyment out of this, because there's some really awesome action scenes in here and some really cool moments to enjoy. But I do think the movie falls off a bit, because when it tried to recapture that Inception thing, I think Inception personally was is a little easier to follow. You understood how they were going between the depths of the dreams to try and incept someone into thinking what they want them to think. Well, Tenet, I spent a lot of the movie being like, are they breaking their rules that they set up? But then, how did this happen here? And how is this happening? Like, where was this? You start trying to think, where was the start of this? What started all this? How far back does it go? How does this loop break? Essentially, because the movie focuses around a central loop of time, essentially, is the way to think of it. It gets a little nutso, and I think that's why some people may not have enjoyed it as much is because it can get confusing for some people. That's where the headache starts, is you start thinking too hard, and maybe some people don't want to think when they're watching a movie like this. They want to just sit down and enjoy an awesome action flick. But like I said, though, there's lots of really cool set pieces that you get to see in lots of different lights, lots of cool locations. Actually, I thought that some of the locations were really interesting to look at, because I don't think we see stuff like that in movies. They seemed like what would be relatively boring areas to most people, but actually looked really, really freaking cool in this movie, and were really nice ways to look. Overall, I think Robert Pattinson and John David Washington did a great job in acting. John David, the protagonist, is a really cool character, at least for the role he's trying to play. And Robert Pattinson, he sort of plays like the guy who makes all the schemes and stuff. They work really well together in the movie, and they make a good partnership. So overall, like I said, I think I would look at this movie and say it's just a a fun headache is the best way I can put it. But an enjoyable watch. If you like Christopher Nolan movies, I think you'll like this. I don't know what people who are maybe more critic, more of like a critic for films would think. I don't know if you would enjoy it that much, but I don't think it's anything special. I just think he made a really interesting action flick with a nice little plot twist in it all. Not really a plot twist, but what the plot revolves around is really interesting and enjoyable. And it's almost like putting a puzzle together later in the movie, which can be enjoyable, but if you get lost, then you're like, well, this is fun, but I have no idea what's happening in this scene. But yeah, so overall, I would say Tenet. The best I can put it is it's definitely an enjoyable little headache. But thanks for talking to me. I have two movies that I also want to talk about. Monster Hunter, which I watched recently. I actually watched it in theater with like nobody around, which was relatively fun. It was a fun little movie. I can probably talk a bit more since I did watch or have played Monster Hunter, and especially Monster Hunter World, since a lot of those characters appear in the movie. And then I watched Parasite recently, which was the definition of me realizing that I don't catch subtle stuff, but we'll get into those more in their videos. Other than that, if you like this type of video where I just talk about movies I watched on my little journey to watch more movies, please leave a like and a comment. Tell me what you thought about Tenet. If you enjoyed it, if you thought it had too many Nolanisms in it, if you thought it was way too confusing and he was trying too hard to recreate that Inception love, just let me know. And other than that, have a good one.